Welcome back to the channel. This is The Casuals. I'm Jin.
And I'm Zaki.
And today's episode is Impractical Questions. I almost forgot the title. So yeah, like, every other Impractical Questions that we've had in the past, it'll be the same exact format where Saki has a lot of, various questions that may range from, truly absurd questions or very thought-provoking, philosophical questions. So yeah, let's just get right into it.
All right, sounds good. So, our first question for today is if sky's the limit, then is space considered over the limit?
Yes. This is simply just because. So the reason why I thought it was just the space is over the limit, it's because you know how Earth has its like the zones, right? Like the actual gas layers and then like the like zones barriers essentially.
Yeah,
So, yeah, theoretically, when you say sky is the limit, you can place that as sky being the limit, right? And then once you go past it, because there is kind of like that invisible but physical barrier, you are going beyond the limit.
right.
So I would assume, yeah, when you say sky is the limit, but you go into space, it is pretty much
Past
beyond
the
the limit.
limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, very rarely do you get things outside going into space, right? Like, obviously you hear all these like spacecraft flights and satellite, even the rockets going up in space, but like
Mm-hmm.
in contrast to how many things are in the air, like I think there's like estimated like always at a time like I want to say around 1,000 planes in the sky at once, constantly, at all times. That amount, like every day, adding up over a year to the amount that's like, spacecraft launched is like astronomically different. But like the difference is astronomically huge, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So like, for us normal people, the sky is truly the limit. We're never gonna like until like space travel becomes like buying a car or something like that, right? We're never gonna be going beyond the sky, and even then, going into the sky, it's rare for us anyways. Most people don't even ride a plane in their lives. They don't even go out of their homes, country or something like that. I think it's like a truly high of number where people like the amount of people that actually never leave their birthplace is insanely high.
I can see that. I can
So
see where that rate number is pretty high.
yeah, so I truly think like in both senses, right? The sky is truly the limit for most people, and if you were to go beyond the sky and go into space, you are going beyond the limits because it's just not normal in most sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What was your thoughts on that statement or question when you thought about it?
I considered it yes, just because, yeah, if you could consider just the sky the limit, but then again, no, sky, yeah, because then the sky would end, right? And then it becomes outer space, right? Or space.
Yeah.
So anything above that, yeah, I would consider outside that the limit.
hmm
So yeah, it'd be considered over, the limit, quote unquote.
I guess you could look at it another way. If you're in the sky, you're breathing and you're alive. If you're in space, you're fucking dead.
True.
I mean, obviously you can wear a spacesuit, but then like as a person, you can survive like 50,000 feet in the air breathing, right? But at some point, the sky doesn't become the sky and it eerily becomes the space. And once you're in space, you're dead because you can't breathe and it's too cold.
Yeah, you'd freeze too, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So truly, the sky is the limit for literal human limitations or any living being limitations, except for one of those. Have you ever heard of the water bear?
Yes.
Yes, with that sole exception of the water bear. I mean, technically they're kind of dead when they're in space, but at the same time they're just really in like really specific hibernation, sequence that they can survive the conditions of space. Um, but outside of that, almost every like living creature that we can see with our observable eyes, including us, won't survive in space.
Yeah. No, no chance.
Yeah, absolutely zero chance. Um, which kind of reminds me, have you ever heard of the messed up story of the Russians sending the dog to space?
No.
So during the whole space race, right? Russia was testing out the rockets, and one of the very first test subjects was a dog, and that dog died in a horrible way, uh, because not only was it extremely stressed out and in a distressed state, being launched in a rocket that is kind of like a prototype essentially, um, that rocket blew up in the air.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. So that wasn't, when I learned of that, I'm just like, damn, like, holy. But yeah, that was just some random detail I remembered. I don't remember the name. I don't think it was Sputnik, because I think Sputnik was the one that actually went to space and came back. No, I think it was Sputnik. I don't remember which Sputnik. It might have been Sputnik 2. But yeah, it was essentially they just sent a dog and it was distressed, basically was in the worst basically way to die, was extremely stressed, extremely in not in good physical condition when it's being launched in space in a very unsafe manner and blowing up in the end.
That's why a dog? It couldn't have been any other animal.
Yeah, it could have
Like
been like a mouse or something.
yeah, like a rat or something.
But I mean, obviously, not to discredit people who do have rats or mice as pets, because I have heard rats are actually are known to show emotional like responses. Like they get
What
attached
is
to
it?
people.
Yeah, I could see that.
So like obviously saying this kind of statement is a disservice to them, as we see dogs as our emotional companion. Um, but obviously mouse or rats are more quote unquote more acceptable in most societal norms. Uh, or rats and mouse are more acceptable in the societal norms for experimentation. Obviously, that's slowly shifting over time, but like at least back then, clearly that would have been fine. Why dog?
Yeah.
And I think they even sent a monkey into space.
I did hear about that one. I didn't hear about the dog. Kind of made me a little sad, but
Oh yeah, because the reason why you didn't hear about the dog is because they covered it up,
sounds about right.
and they didn't release the documents until like way later. So yeah, um, the more you know, I guess. Depressing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
hopefully the next question brings a lighter tone.
yeah. This question, this next one, we'll move along. We'll move along now. So this next one will be, if you're driving a federal-owned car and you run a stop sign, is that considered a felony?
Ooh, I want to say yes. At the same time, no. I think my instinct says yes, but in reality, I do know it's probably not the case, because I think it's the same thing with police. They're allowed to break whatever rules they want as long as they can justify it. And I remember this being the case where someone like was like, "Hey, if someone's parking a handicapped spot when they're clearly not a handicapped spot, handicapped car, right? Is that illegal?" And someone tweeted it out to like the local police department that has their own Twitter account, and they're like, "Yes, it's illegal." And then the dude posts a picture of a police car in that same exact description, of them being in a handicapped spot where they shouldn't be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Is this your car?" And people were, it was really interesting because this was posted on a forum, right? I didn't necessarily see the original tweet itself. I saw the image of that being shown, of someone screenshotting it and sharing it. And there was a whole discourse as to like, yeah, you're not supposed to do it legally, but it's the fucking police. They get to do whatever they want. And people said like the reason why police even park there is because they want easy access to their cars or whatever. Like, if there's for some reason, like a sudden emergency where there's a shooter or something like that, they need to get to a place where it's clear, like they're able to get to the car without being jammed, and grab stuff, whether it's from the passenger seat or the trunk. And so they could justify it that way, right? People, and they say, obviously these people who are saying this, they're like, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that they're still, taking up a handicap spot or like, place where you're not supposed to park. But I can see the reason why, the police are justifying it, right? And obviously the police are not federal agencies as far as I'm concerned. They're actually private agencies.
Uh-huh.
But for federal, I would assume it goes even beyond that, right? Let's just say, for an extreme example, I do know that, like, if in most cases, I would assume that like federal cars would probably not disobey traffic laws unless if one or two things, right? One, it's an emergency, right? Something extreme happened, it's an emergency. Federal cars need to get there fast, right? That's
Right.
obviously very reasonable. It's the same thing for ambulances, right? And fire trucks. Everyone gets the fuck away, or moves out of the fucking way
Should,
for fire trucks. Well,
should,
hopefully,
should move out of the way.
should move, right? And most people do.
Yeah.
Um, I assume it's the same thing where you see a bunch of fucking like armored, like almost limousine like vehicles all moving into like high speed, And I'm assuming they also have like some sort of like alarm system or like siren system, or at least some sort of system to let people know that there's federal cars in your way, get out of the way. So they would obviously run a stop sign. Or two, the less extreme would be like it is like kind of like a motorcade. And they simply do not want to risk stopping at a stop sign, right? Even if it's like mild or something like that, like it's not like it's not like a parade. It's just simply the president is moving in this car. We don't want to stop at a stop sign in case there is an ambush, right? We always want to be kind of on the move.
Right.
So I can see them running through the stop sign, no repercussions because again, it's the federal like government vehicle. But this is tangentially related to only the presidential like stuff, right? If it was like say just a federal agency, like let's just say the federal environmental like official car, and they run it, I feel like a police could actually stop them and be like, hey, you ran a stop sign, don't do that.
I feel like they could, yeah.
So
Like,
uh-huh.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like they could get pulled over for doing that.
Yeah. So I think it really just depends on one, the person who witnesses the act, right? Which law enforcement agency witnesses the act, and two, what the context of that act is violating, and three, who it is, right? If it's like again, even if, like because there's a lot of federal positions that aren't important at all in the retrospect, like bigger picture, right? Let's just say, I mean, yeah, like like a surveyor for the Environmental Protection Agency is still very important, right? But like they're you're not considered as important as, let's say, the Secret Service escorting the president. you know?
Yeah, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. So obviously when the law enforcement agency person sees this, they're like, well, I'm not gonna fuck with the actual, Secret Service. I'm gonna go enforce the law on the Environmental Protection Agency surveyor, right? And so yeah, I think like yes, it could definitely happen, and it probably has happened before, but also no, because there's too much nuance to it.
True, but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The question was, is it a felony? Not
Felony, right?
Would they get pulled over?
Yeah, I guess it would still apply, right? If it is I think it is a felony, right? To run a stop sign.
I don't know if is it a felony?
Or is it a misdemeanor?
Might be a misdemeanor.
Let's just go on the assumption that it is. Let's just say for the sake of the question, right? It is a felony, right? Felony, right? All right, felony. There you go. I managed to say it. For running a stop sign, no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the federal, official federal car does it, then yes, it would still be a federal crime.
God. Okay, yeah, I guess for the sake of the question, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, because I think it's just that's how it works. The law, because the United States, at least they try, or quote unquote try to uphold the law, and no one's above the law.
Yeah.
But obviously, again, the whole nuance thing. But in terms of a very direct, like this is exactly what happened, then yes, they would be charged with a felony.
All right. Makes sense. Shall we move forward?
Yep.
All right. Next one. I don't know why I thought this was like a really smart question. I'm reading it now. It doesn't sound very smart anymore. What is a question with no answer considered?
A question.
Yeah, I was like, wouldn't it just still be like a question?
I feel like there is okay, in terms of a question, right? I feel like there is no question that can never have an answer, right? Because there are two different types of questions. One is like a question that has a direct, you know, answer, Like what happens if I, touch this what happens if I touch this ball, right? It's going to move. That is the only answer. Um in a, in a vacuumed scenario, right? In an isolated scenario, if you touch a ball, right, a perfectly round ball, and you touch it, a rubber ball, I should clarify, not a. I should have clarified because you could just say, well, that could be a fucking titanium ball that weighs 3,000 pounds, right? um, but like a regular rubber ball, and you touch it, it will move, right? And no matter who you ask, most 99% would say, yeah, it's gonna move, right? And that
Right.
is an answer. But there are some open-ended questions that you theoretically could say that never has an answer because of the way the question is formulated, in order to make you think and be like, well, because it's so the way it's so broad, or like so narrow, or no, it's so broad, especially in philosophy, right? There is no right answer because of the way it's worded, right? And when you get into that kind of stuff, it's like any answer is technically the answer, but it's not the universal accepted answer. Therefore, is that question actually answered? I don't know. In my opinion, yes, just because if someone can give you their own opinion, and they believe that that is the answer, and it does, and you can actually see it being an answer, right? It may not be the correct answer for you, but you can see it being a reason, right? An actual reason that supports, or that can be supported, be like, hey, it's related to this question, then yes, it is an answer. I feel like that is still a legitimate answer, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the, you know, it's like the both sides, right? Both extremes. Like, let's just say, for example, I'm not gonna say which my opinion exactly is, and I'm not gonna ask for anyone who is watching this. But for example, the death penalty is a pretty good debate, right? Both sides have their own reason, and you can look at both of them and say both people have legitimate reasons as to whether or not they support it or don't support it, whether they want it to exist or not exist, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
does it discredit any? Does their answers discredit any other answers? No, they're both answers. It just depends on when you the person who's asking it accepts one or the other, right? And I would say it's pretty fucking hard to say you don't accept either answers, because clearly this kind of more extreme question does kind of require, or you're kind of looking for an answer, right? And some people might even say in between, but it just, I guess it just really depends. But this is more towards the actual answers, be either side being the extreme, multiple different types of answers, but they all still answer that question: is death penalty, like, should it be enforced? Yes and no. Both work as an answer. It just depends on the person asking it. So if a question never does gets answered, or if you ask a question and never gets an answer, it will still stay with the question, for simplicity's sake. But in reality, I don't think there's ever been a question that can never be answered in the regular sense of world. I'm pretty sure there's like math. Well, I don't know. There's math equations that haven't been solved yet, right? There's actually I think there's like 10 impossible math questions that have never been solved and will never be solved. At least that's what they assume, right? But clearly there has to be an answer if that equation managed to come into existence in the first place. So I don't know. Like, I guess you could point out, someone could point out, that was like, well, we have a math equation that's never been able to be answered, right? Doesn't that technically mean it's still a question? And it's like, yeah, but also no, because it's kind of like thinking it's like if that question exists, clearly there has to be an answer for this type of for math, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
Maybe like
tricky.
yes and no, I guess.
Yeah, yes and no in the same way, right? In the same sense.
All right. So a question with no answer could be a question or not
Yeah.
a question. So, all right. Well, that was more interesting than I thought about it in my head. All right. This will be a kind of a fun one. What do you think the most passive aggressive animal is?
Fuck. That's hard. I genuinely cannot think of one. You know what? It might be a cat.
I was about to say my answer is a cat.
Because I was thinking, like, I initially thought it was a cat too, right? But then I was like, well, no, there are some extreme cases where cats really fucking hate you. But then again, in terms of actual attitude, I think cat, like, the most common one would be cat, because they do tend to show passive aggressive, like, behaviors at times.
Yep.
Kind of like knocking shit over at times while looking at you.
They're like, what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like that kind of attitude. So yeah, cat would be my answer. It was one of the first things I thought when you asked that question, but I just didn't say it out loud because I immediately thought into all the other scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, cats. I think cats. I think that's the most. That would be pretty acceptable because like I think like if you try saying like dogs or like whatever giraffes or monkeys, I feel like most people are like, yeah, I can see it, but like, but then you see cats, they're like, oh yeah, cats, you know?
Yeah, I get that. I get that vibe too.
Yeah, it's just a vibe. That was a short one, but I think it's kind of like that silent understanding, silent agreement.
Yep.
So we can move on, I guess.
All right. This one, you kind of have to listen carefully to the words in the question that I'm gonna say. Is atheism a non-profit organization?
Yes. Because atheism doesn't believe in the existence of God, and if there is no God, there is no profit.
Cool. Most people didn't understand that when I asked them.
I almost thought you were talking about like the actual non-profit organization. I'm like, wait a minute, no, he's talking about prophets as in like the Moses or what was his name for? I think it was the Islamic one. Started with Ahmed. I think it was Ahmed. For Muslims, I don't. Someone's gonna kill me for this, so I'm gonna stop myself. Huh?
Was it Muhammad?
Muhammad. There we go. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna pay for this for getting this wrong or remembering it wrong. But yeah, I think like literally in both senses term, right? Literally and figuratively, atheisms do not have they are non-profits because legitimately they do not exist.
Yep.
There is no teachings. There is no high figure authority. So yeah, non-profit indeed.
Yeah. People would think I said non-profit, like money profit. And I'm like, no, prophet.
Yeah. If you had not told me, if you had not given me that warning, I think I would have actually fell for it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when you say it, but when you like read it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, duh, no.
Yeah, I think if you had also like if you didn't warn me, but you said like non-profit instead of well, you could have said non-profit, and I would have thought you said non-profit.
Right, like if I said it really quickly.
Yeah, or softly, no emphasization. Then yeah, I would have fell for it 100%.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure you understood the question. So, all right, I guess our next one is. I feel like I know this, but probably don't. Why doesn't glue stick to the inside of the bottle or like the glue stick tube?
Well. Let me tell you, there is a special coating within that glue bottle, right? But also, glue does not. So, if I am correct, right? Glue does not typically react when what's it called? Until it is exposed to oxygen. And that doesn't mean it instantly what's it called? Instantly hardens or anything like that. I think it's just the way that the chemical compositions are within glue. Once it starts exposed to oxygen, it'll start like actually drying up faster, right? Sorry, I had to sneeze. But in addition to, I'm pretty sure there is a special coating within the glue bottles, right? In addition to that, and not it being in a sealed state, what's it called? That's why glue doesn't harden within the bottle, right? Because have you ever had those glues where it's like the, I think this is all glues anyways, but like those glues that, like, you know, you have to like kind of unscrew and then it squeezes out after?
Like the liquid one?
Yeah, the liquid one.
Yeah.
And you know how, like, if you leave that liquid cap unscrewed, after a couple days it will harden, right?
Uh-huh.
And then there's like a bit of that, I guess, hardened glue that kind of travels down a little bit, and you have to like peel it off.
Yeah.
I think that's because that part was exposed to oxygen, right? And so when it's not exposed to oxygen, when it's within that, you know, glue bottle and it's, you know, coated, that's why glue doesn't harden, right? That is my assumption, and I feel like that is correct. But, you know, I'm about to look it up.
Also, I have another question about glue.
Uh huh.
So if it doesn't harden until it's exposed to oxygen.
Mhm.
What if you have, like, you know, the liquid glue, like the glue you used in school, the white glue?
Uh huh.
Like, let's say you have that, but you didn't use it,
Uh huh.
and then, like, I don't know, 20 plus years pass. Would it still be a liquid, or would it somewhat harden a little bit because it's just, I don't know, been forever?
Hmm.
So I feel like that's happened.
Huh.
Would it always stay like liquidy, non-stick to the inside, or would it just harden over time?
If you were
left
to
it for a long time.
if you were not to open it, right?
Yeah.
Yes and no, because here's the thing. I just found out I was right. I was half right about my explanation. It's actually not the inside that's coated. That part I was wrong. It's
in the glue.
yeah. It is the chemical in the glue. And so there's water inside the liquid part of glue, right? And once you expose it to air, it starts to what's it called? It starts to evaporate. It's very slowly. And once the liquid is evaporated, that's when glue hardens.
Okay.
And so when it's inside the bottle, there's no air for the liquid to evaporate. Thus, it stays liquid inside.
Even over like an extended period of time.
Yes. However, if you were to leave a glue bottle, theoretically, what's it called? In like you never open it, right? And you leave a glue bottle out for like 100 years, right? Eventually, it's gonna harden because I think it has to do with the fact that, like, no matter how good a plastic bottle could be or whatever, air will get inside. Air will get inside eventually, right? It's just gonna do it very slowly over time. So you would have to wait for a very long time for glue to harden inside if you were to never open it.
Okay, so it would harden, but it just takes an extremely long time.
Yes. But I think it also depends on the type of glue because there's multiple types of glue. But if we're going on the assumption of like that, you know, classic Elmer's glue bottle, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what would happen in the principle of there's liquid inside, so it won't dry up until it's exposed to air and a sufficient amount of air. So yeah.
All right. All right. That was kind of an interesting one to me. All right, I guess this next one. Quick thing. Do you remember the game Mousetrap?
I want to say yes, but I think no. Let me look it up really quickly.
It was that board game where it had a bazillion different pieces with like one marble or something, and then like.
Yes. I'm looking at the image. Oh my god, yes, I remember this.
Yeah. Okay. So this kind of has to do with just the word Mousetrap, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So would you consider Disneyland or Disney World, you know, whatever, wherever you are, would you consider those a people trap operated by a mouse?
Yes.
I would too.
100%. Mickey Mouse being the mascot, people going in the the amusement parks, riding all along, being in a magical little world. Little do they know they're being trapped by
The mouse.
the mouse. You'll
The
never
mouse.
know it. You were lured into it.
Yep. All you can hear is ho ho.
Imagine you just see a giant Mickey Mouse on the difference, and all you hear is like a very like kind of like low reverb, resounding sound of ho ho.
I trapped you. Ho ho.
We gotta move on before Disney sues us.
Okay. Moving on. This question is it's just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's just straight out dumb. So is it okay to shoot tourists during tourist season?
For funny reasons, yes, but for actual reasons, no. And I think that's sufficient enough. I think people will get it.
Yeah, if you don't, I'm sorry. But I thought that had to be a question for some reason.
That's such a good one.
It's so dumb. Alright, here's another funny one. If two vegans are arguing, is it still considered beef?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Because
They wouldn't-
clearly they're not living in harmony, so there must be something that causes the, disharmony, which is the beef.
They wouldn't call it impossible meat. Or
No.
impossible beef.
Because when they have beef with each other, that means, vegans, they don't want meat. And when there's beef, that means they're arguing because they're not in harmony anymore.
Right. So it would still be considered beef.
Yes, 100%, absolutely. Gotta piss them off even more,
I agree. Some of these questions are funny. I haven't seen this list in a while.
Are we close to our last one?
This actually is our last one.
Oh, nice.
So question 70. Oh wait, sorry. Our vegan one was 69. Nice. Anyways, question 70 and the last one for this episode. If honesty's the best policy, then is dishonesty the second best policy?
Yes. Because yes, just yes. But honesty is the best policy is literally meaning it is the best out of all the other options, right? And dishonesty can be the second best policy depending on the context. So theoretically, there is a world where dishonesty is the second best policy.
Yep.
And it's simple as that.
All right, and that's all of our questions for this episode this week.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to end it?
Shall we end it? Is there any other comments you wanted to do for these really stupid questions today?
Honestly, my brain's been fried recently, so I can't think of any genius questions. So I'm gonna have to close it, put my hands off towards you and bow
Honestly,
down.
I'll be honest with you. We've been doing this almost a year. I still don't know the closing.
All right, man. So I'll end it here. So I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and this is the Casuals, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.